everyone, and welcome to the Governance and Audit Committee of Tuesday, the 8th of February. If we can take the first item on the agenda, and that's apologies for absence, please.
Apologies from Councillors Jen Rayner, Rob Stewart and Clive Lloyd will be late to the meeting, and also from Richard Rowlands.
Thank you very much. Could we ask for any disclosures of interests, please? Councillor Peter Black.
Yes, I have a personal interest in items 4 and 5 as a governor of Pentre Harvard School. Thank
you, Councillor Black. Councillor Mike White.
Yes, same declaration, personal interest in item 4 and 5, governor of Pentre Harvard School.
Okay, thank you very much. I've not seen any further hands up, so thank you both for those disclosures. Can we take the minutes of the meeting of the 12th of January next, please? And if you can go through them page by page for accuracy. That's page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. If I could have some hands up, please, if you're satisfied that that's an accurate reflection of that meeting.
I'll move, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I've got 3 hands up. Thank you. You can take those as well, Jeremy.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask, if you mind, if Ben Smith comes in next, because Ben's got a couple of urgent matters he needs to deal with. So if we can take Ben's item agenda 9 next, and then we return to the normal running of the agenda. So can I welcome Ben in to speak us on this verbal update, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to shuffle the committee running order around a little bit. My apologies for messing you around, but as you've indicated, quite a few other bits on at the moment. In terms of a verbal update, because this committee has shown great interest in the accounts receivable, and there were 2 audit matters in particular that you were particularly concerned around, which was the escalating of invoice recoveries as rapidly as possible and addressing the backlog of invoice recovery. I should, by way of context, say that we're in a position where we're very much back to where we were 2 years ago in terms of that wider context, in that whilst accounts receivable and recovery is important, we are in the position of also most of my teams that I either directly manage or professionally oversee giving large sums of money out to people, whether it be winter fuel payment grants, business support grants, or just about to deal with non-domestic rate relief grants again. In terms of the matters in front of you, and I apologise, it is only a verbal update, so it's difficult to fully give you a picture, but I thought it was important you are assured of the in-year position. There are a number of things that you were looking for updates on, and that was that the monthly debt recovery activity meetings continue to be undertaken. I am continuing to keep a very close eye on the overall amount of outstanding aged debt. In the snapshot at the end of January, we had just over £11 million of outstanding debt. 80% of it was in what I consider the shorter term debt. That by inference left 20% on the older debt. When I compare it over the years, in January 2020 we had £3.6 million outstanding, January 21 2.2 million approximately. It stays at 2.2 million in January 22. So there is an element of it plateauing in terms of the improvement. I will come on to that in a moment because that's not that surprising. I've already given you the context of many of my operations being in giving away money mode rather than collecting money mode. But in terms of targeted debt recovery actions through September through to January 22, over 60% of the invoices by value have been progressed as paid in full. That left under 30% remaining to be unpaid, and others in various states of recovery. Work continues to be ongoing in terms of write-offs and exhausting all recovery means before we do get to write-off, and then ultimately referring to legal, and continue to remind service departments of their prioritisation of needing to recover income, because any income we don't collect is a burden on everyone else. It goes without saying, and I've indicated a number of times to the committee, that the service centre is under substantial duress in terms of the demands placed upon it as a result of UK and Welsh Government announcements and a number of things that we're trying to take forward locally. All very well intentioned, but it does mean a combination of stretched resources and some absences due to illness in the service centre have meant I had to step this down to being only a verbal report, for which I profusely apologise, and then I doubly apologise for asking the chair to shuffle around because I have some budget matters to attend to. As well as the wider context, I did indicate that there were other reasons for the surprise. And again, another apologies from me. It's going to be a mea culpa day. You were due at the last update to have an update on the impact of the sort of insolvency and governance rules with companies, which I think we were timed out because it was the last item on last time. I do have a short written note that I will, with your indulgence, circulate round to members to summarise what the impact of all those temporary COVID measures were and what some of the longer standing arrangements are, which basically gives debtors longer time to pay and better get out of jail free cards for being able to defer their payments as they were under economic and financial duress. And associated that was also some of the arrangements around arrangements for those personal debtors who had immediate financial crises or mental health crises. There has been some take up of the schemes, and again there are some stats that I can forward to members in due course where you'll see the numbers and values are relatively modest, but they're further protections that the government in the UK brought in for protecting debtors. And given that we are in a position where undoubtedly the economic circumstances remain challenging for all households, and I'm not bashful at saying that in financial terms, the authority weathered COVID to date relatively well in terms of its very substantial outturn position for the last 2 years. And Cabinet is likely to see further updates indicating that again. It will come as no surprise that whilst my primary duty is to collect all sums due as quickly as possible, I will equally be looking to be a compassionate creditor for a number of debtors who are distressed. And I will always draw the distinction between those who can't and won't pay. One category I'm more tolerant of than the others, and I'm sure the committee is too. But I think it was important that committee have a broad overview. And I think, again, this is dangerous for me to commit to another timeline on behalf of colleagues. But I think given we're near the year end, and then it will be year end closure, and the resources being diverted onto Oracle implementation, I think you do need a further written report, but I would ask that you ask for that in June. If you go any earlier than that, it will clash with arrangements around year end, and also the reforming of this committee after the annual general meeting of council in May. So I do apologise for rattling through with a raft of items. Hopefully you've picked up on the headline numbers and got the broad context, and I can only apologise once again for it being a relatively short verbal update. But I felt if I left it to the end of the meeting, there was a danger I wouldn't give you an update again, which would have meant 2 meetings on the trot. So I will pause there. I do appreciate that's a relatively quick canter through, but the assurances you should be seeking are and receiving from my update is that we continue to progress all debt as much as we can, as fast as we can, but with sufficient degree of compassion. And I thank you, Chair, for allowing me to change the running order. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have any questions for Ben, please? A lot of information to take in now, I acknowledge that, but I think we need to take the headline. If we can start with Julie Davis.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Ben, at the last update from the Service Centre Manager, they were doing quite a bit of work around educating service departments to ensure the collectability of debts. Is there any evidence that this work has gone through?
There certainly is in terms of evidence that the service centre has continued to communicate and meet monthly with debt liaison meetings with the directorates, and I'm sure that will continue. As you'll be aware, there is a senior management review, which means some of the management arrangements are going to change, and some of them will fall under Mr. Hill in future rather than myself. But obviously I will have a professional obligation over all of them, and it is our intention to continue to do a double act on many of these items because it's still important that the overall function is delivered, whoever is theoretically responsible for it. But there is evidence that those liaison meetings are working, and that departments and directorates are being reinforced as to what they need to do. But equally, I must emphasise the broader context, which is we recognise individuals, communities and companies are struggling, and I will adopt an approach of being as compassionate as I can in the challenging circumstances we currently face and are likely to face going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Ben. Yeah, it was a bit much to actually take it. So just to clarify in my mind as well, shall we say, with regards to the business community, you know, invoice chasing and so on, even though the current economic climate is challenging, really it's no worse this year than previous years. And with regards to, shall we say, residential debt, you know, council tax and so on, doesn't show a picture that it's actually any worse than last year as well, given current trends.
So on the former, if I may come in, you're absolutely right in terms of picking out the bones of what I've said, Councillor Jones. It's certainly no worse, and it would have been hard for it to have improved given those protective measures that have been wrapped around all corporate debtors and some protections for personal debtors. The accounts receivable report does not include council tax collection figures. They're handled separately given the sheer scale of the debts. There are pressures on that, as are indicated in the quarterly monitoring reports to Cabinet, and it remains the case that there is a deficit on the collection fund. But I am equally aware the Welsh Government has been indicating they will be making recompense to all local authorities, recognising again that those debtors are themselves also under pressure. So that's separate to the accounts receivable update. But you're absolutely right in picking out the bare bones of what I've said. So I commend you for understanding when I've rattled through without you having the advantage of having figures in front of you. So you're absolutely right on the former. The latter is a little bit worse, but we are again being protected by Welsh Government actions, and that will be reflected in due course when we have a formal offer letter. I am in receipt of a letter indicating there will be a minimum 85% coverage of all council tax losses for the year, which obviously protects the authority's position again from outturn.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mike White. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mike Lewis was up first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Ben, you mentioned that there was a debt of 11 million and approximately 20% of that was long-term or historical. That leaves around about 9 million. What percentage is this of the total sums involved? What is the percentage? You know, because to take a figure of 9 million and just big enough, we have no real indication of how many have been paid and how many haven't been paid. So I wonder if you could clear that for me. Thank you.
So unfortunately, the figures I have in front of me are only the total amounts rather than proportionate numbers of invoices, but I would perhaps partly answer that by reminding you how big the council is as a whole. £11 million is a big number to the average person who might be listening into this this debate in committee, but it's in the context of a council with a balance sheet of several £billion. And I think, drop you a note, Audit Chair, that there were some national publications from Audit Wales, and one that, you know, we've got arrangements for flagging up to members important reports, and one that's come out recently is a data tool which enables members of the public and officers and members to access the overall position of all authorities relative to each other. And if anyone has a spare half hour and wants to while away the time reading the Audit Wales reports, you click on them, you'll see we've got on the face of it, as measured by Audit Wales, the strongest current asset, that's net, I guess, current assets less current liabilities, the strongest balance sheet of any authority in Wales at present. So I'm afraid I can't directly answer your question, Councillor Lewis, in terms of the numbers, because I've only got what I've got in front of me today, but I think that probably gives some helpful context, which is part of the point you were making.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Ben. I just wanted to touched on obviously the bad debt or the unpaid debt that we have. Is there a timescale or an expiry period in place which you have for us to claim back the debt?
So, like any body, we are statute barred once we get beyond 7 years from recovering any debt from any party. As I've indicated repeatedly to this committee, and I'm sure they won't mind me drawing attention to it again, the service centre staffing levels are stretched, as are a number of other functions across the authority, and there are acute labour supply shortages, which makes it incredibly difficult to go out and get additional people to work on it, not only in my own area, but ultimately these get referred to legal for pursuing, and there are those same pressures in terms of prioritisation for the legal department, and then of course ultimately the sanction of going to the courts who have their own backlogs. So it should not come as a surprise to you that there are backlogs everywhere we look, and a severe supply shortage which does impinge on my ability to prioritise this. And I go back contextually to what I said at the beginning, Councillor White, which is this all has to be viewed in the context where the number one priority from both UK and Welsh Government in terms of advice to local authorities is very much give sums of money away. And I understand the context of that in terms of the pressures that are faced, but it's very difficult to divert staff onto giving money out not having any more staff, not realistically being able to recruit them in the short term, and then also trying to up the game in terms of recovery. So I am pleased and proud of being able to stabilise the position, but I do accept the point you're making, Councillor White, which is ultimately these lapse in due course. But it just is indicative of the acute pressures the authority faces, like all others, and I can only see it getting worse in terms of the general economic climate. I tread carefully on that. You know, there are policy decisions and political bits to come on that, but I can see only pain for households and businesses to come, and the council cannot be fully insulated from that. But I am pleased that our balance sheet starts from a position of absolute strength and 2 years of really strong outturn performance, which means, as I've said, we've done better than most financially out of COVID. It's a sort of horrible thing to say, but it's the reality of it. And, you know, our financial position has improved, and I will want to be a compassionate creditor for these debtors, albeit it's right that you'll want to hold me and officers to account to ensure that every debt that can be collected by those that can pay but choose not to will be collected, because ultimately any debt not collected falls ultimately on others to pay or general taxpayers to pay. So I hope that gives you some assurance, Councillor White, and that context I think is very, very important at the moment for you to weigh as a committee.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I certainly understand the issues are very, very sensitive in the current climate.
Thank you. Simon Cockins.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to remind members that obviously AR is an annual audit that we do on a fundamental basis. So the audit is currently underway for the current financial year. It's due to be reported back to members in the Q4 report, which at this point is due in about April or May. Initial findings are things relatively the same as last year, unfortunately. Nothing's really changed significantly, but obviously I can't confirm that until the report's finalised, but members will get feedback on that in Q4 monitoring report.
Thank you, Simon. Some really good questions there asked of Ben, and I appreciate the brief verbal update, Ben. And if you have any notes, perhaps you could circulate them to members. You made reference to some notes. I think for the thank you. I think for the purpose of the minutes, we need to recognise the pressures on all of those service areas. You know, both Ben's team, legal, service departments, service centre, and the problems that may increase rather than decrease over the next few months for the purpose of the minutes. And we just need to keep a watchful eye on it and look forward to receiving the Chief Internal Auditor's report to see what the current state of play is and what the actions are going to be taken as a result of any recommendations. But thank you very much, Ben, and you're welcome to leave the meeting whenever you wish, Ben, because I'm aware of the pressures that you're under.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to committee for their forbearance. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I thank members for those questions? There was a lot of information to receive on a verbal update, but I was happy to receive that rather than receive nothing at all. So thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is the Internal Audit Plan 21-22 and the monitoring report up to December the 31st. And as I say, welcome back to our Chief Internal Auditor, and hope you had a good holiday. And if you can take us through the report, please, Simon.
Yes, thanks, Chair. And belated Happy New Year to you all. Obviously, I was away for January, so I have a nice break. So I'm back refreshed and renewed. So yeah, this is agenda item 4 on page 5 of the agenda pack, going back to agenda item 4. This is just the standard quarterly monitoring report for the work undertaken by the team in Q3. So from October to December 2021. Through that period, we finalised a total of 20 audits, with the scope of those audits outlined in Appendix 2 of the report. Of those 20 audits, 9 were issued with a high level of assurance and 11 had a substantial level of assurance. A total of 105 audit recommendations were made in the period. Management accepted all of the recommendations made at the time. We also certified some grants, as shown in 2.6 of quite substantial value, as required by Welsh Government. Just to make members aware, with easing of restrictions over the period as well, the team were actually able to recommence some site visits to finalise some on-site testing work which was required. So that was one plus of the period, and hopefully going forward, fingers crossed, things will be a bit easier for us to undertake visits again going forward. So in terms of the completion of the plan, as shown in 2.11 in Appendix 3, as at the 31st of December, 65 audit activities from the plan had been completed to December, which represents about 50% of the original plan, and an additional 25 audits were in progress. So as of the end of December, approximately 69 to 70% of the plan was in progress or complete, which is relatively positive given the end of Q3. I have noted in 3.3 that I was due to have a report from the service centre manager today on the management of absence. I believe that's been deferred to the March meeting. So again, we are due to do the follow-up of that review in Q4, and I'll feed that back to members in due course. But I believe Sian's report is now due in March as opposed to the meeting today. I've got no other comments on the report. Obviously, the appendices are as usual. Appendix 1 is just the reports finalised and the assurance rating. Appendix 2 is the scope of the review and some key findings. And then Appendix 3 is an update of the plan where we are as of December. Just to point out to members, we have had to defer some audits in the plan from 2021 to 22-23. There's a range of reasons for these, and I was going to outline the main reasons for those in my Q4 report and as part of the annual plan for quarter 23-24. Primarily, they're due to resources or where departments have not been on site, for example, or have not been operating due to COVID. We have not really had a chance to visit or had any work to audit as such, but I'm happy to take any questions on that or any other points of the report.
Thank you, Simon. Do we have any questions for Simon? Councillor Mike Lewis.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's only one thing. I read through the report, and there's only one thing that jumps out to me, Simon, and we have discussed it not once, but several times over the last couple of years, which is the employment vetting DBS scheme. I see it's high and you've got it allocated. Can you give us a start date for that, because the audit on that, because it is a priority from a safeguarding point of view for all us councillors, and we like to make sure that goes ahead just as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor, what page are you looking at? Sorry, is it the plan? Is it the list of the jobs for the plan?
Page 19, it's page 19. Employment vetting.
Yes, Councillor Lewis, sorry, this is underway at the moment, so it's due to be reported back to committee as part of the Q4 report, which is due in April and May. Initial findings, and I'm not sure how that's progressing at the moment, but I know the audit is underway as we speak, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Simon. Before I go on to my question, I want to pick up on what Councillor Lewis has said. When community alarms and community equipment stored follow-up was presented to Audit Committee, there was no testing of safeguarding, and I was wondering if that a portion of it could be picked up in the employee vetting in terms of DBS checks of staff there to give us some assurance around safeguarding in those services.
Yeah, I can obviously add that to the plan. If it's not already included in the actual work programme, Julie, I can add that in if that's necessary. But just to make members aware.
Could it be picked up as part of the DBS audit that's currently underway?
Yes, that's fine. I can ask the staff to look at that in due course, Julie, if that's necessary. And just to make members aware, we do have a separate safeguarding audit on the work programme as well, which is penciled in to do next financial year as well as that, Julie. So there is a separate safeguarding review that we undertake on a periodic basis. But yeah, I'll ask the team to make sure that they pick up on those points as part of the DBS audit that's underway at the moment.
Lovely, thank you very much. And the question I wanted to raise, in Appendix 2, I was looking at the scope of the audits completed to date, and there's good coverage of internal controls, some work on governance, but there's very little mention of risk management in the individual services and establishments that were audited. Are you confident that the cross-cutting risk management review is due for completion in Q4 will adequately give us adequate assurance that risks are being identified during the audit and effectively managed in individual services?
Just to pick up on the risk management audit that we do, Julie, we do the risk management audit on an annual basis and try to look at each directorate on a rotational basis. So we do a deep dive into the risks in each particular directorate on an annual basis. We also have a risk management review looking at the key corporate risks in the current financial year. So we do tend to look at higher level risks in terms of the corporate and directorate level risks. Service risks, I believe, are escalated through PFMs and through departmental meetings. So we do, as part of those audits, we do check that those meetings take place and the escalation process is adequate and is operating effectively. So while we don't actually look at the service level risks in particular because of the breadth and the detail that is necessarily known for those, we do look at the process and the procedures behind the escalations. So I'm fairly confident that the reviews that we do offer adequate coverage on each directorate on a rotational basis, and then combine that with the annual risk management review that we undertake as well. I feel we do look at this in quite a lot of detail and have done quite a lot more detail over the last couple of years. I think things are definitely improving in this area. And I have been doing some planning work for next year's audit programme and particularly looking at risks because obviously this was highlighted as an issue last year. So I'm fairly confident at the directorate and corporate level. But again, it's difficult for us to look at the service level risks because of the detail that is involved at that level, if you understand that, Julie.
Yeah, thank you. I was looking for perhaps the bottom-up approach as well as the top-down approach, because if the risks aren't being identified in services, they can't be escalated. But I think the bottom layer is as important as the top layer.
Yeah, I agree. We do look at the escalation process as part of those reviews, but we can maybe concentrate on that going forward if that's something that the committee would like us to look at.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just interrupt? I'm finding it quite difficult to hear, and I think it's because you need to have every mic off except for the person who's talking. Thank you.
Okay. Can we do that? Can we have the mic off except the person that's speaking, please? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wharton. Councillor Mike White.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to keep on the sort of line of DBS. I know within Appendix 2, page 14, under the highways transportation, looking at the taxi framework contract, I know it's related around tendering, but can we also check that as well as the measures in place for the DBS there as well? And as we got as well within the waste management, domestic refuse collection, regarding the obviously checking of the drivers' licenses, but mainly on that because they actually take on agency staff, but that DBS is also carried out in our area as well.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor White. The taxi framework one, I just picked up on. The chair actually raised some queries about this as well. Looking back at the testing this morning, the standard contract framework that was in place, obviously these are to do with tendering, but the original contract framework that was in place does stipulate that any provider of those services have to have DBS in place. So as part of the contract agreement, that is checked as part of the contract award. Obviously, some of these have lapsed, but that contract renewal process does take on board the fact that providers have to have DBSs in place. We haven't picked up on the DBS for the drivers for the waste management, but I can again ask the staff to look at those as part of the current DBS if it's not already covered as part of the scope of that review, Councillor White.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've not seen any more hands up. I've just got oh no, that's it. I've just got a couple of comments to make. I have spoken to Simon prior to the meeting regarding the audits that are identified in Appendix 2, because like Councillor White has just picked up, I was concerned about the taxi audit. There was a couple of others there that I was concerned with, just to get a better understanding as to why the assurance ratings were substantial with the narrative that I was seeing, and the concerns around the public risks, as Councillor White is referring to, particularly the DBS and taxis, and there are other areas there. I have seen all of these reports in full, and there's obviously an opportunity for members to have sight of those full reports if they so wish. But two particularly, I think, if I could ask Simon to circulate to all members for information more than anything, and that's the one on partnership and the one on achieving better together. There's some rich information in there around governance arrangements, risk particularly, which I think will be almost an information, additional learning skill set for the councillors that are members of this committee. So Simon, if I can ask that you circulate those two particularly, but if anyone else wants other reports, then if you can filter that request through me, rather than Simon with additional work, then with Simon's permission, I can send you those reports, whichever you wish to see.
Yes, thanks, Chair. If I could just pick up on that, Chair. I think the two reports you've identified, I think are definitely beneficial for members to get a better, maybe understanding of the topics. They are very informative and they do give a lot of background information. So I think it's definitely a plus for members to maybe spend some time to look at those reports in particular, because they have got quite a lot of information in them.
I absolutely agree, and I think it gives members a background, because although you report in a high assurance level, I think members need to understand the depth and breadth of what you've done, because I don't think there's a lot of compliance and effectiveness work in that review you've completed. You've taken stock and given a high assurance, which are not challenging in any way, but we need to understand exactly what assurance is being offered and what it covers, which is why I want to circulate. Thank you. If there are no other questions for Simon, thank you for that update report. And Simon, I have to say, for the team to be able to have progressed the number of audits that they have progressed in this situation that they've been facing is very, very good position to be in. So if you can pass on my congratulations to the team, and well done for them being able to do what they've done.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
I'm sure members of the Audit Committee will agree with that. The follow-up report is next for you, Simon.
Yeah, me again. Again, this is just a standard quarterly report. This outlines the follow-up work that our team have undertaken on standard audits that have been completed in the quarter. So this is the follow-up of the recommendations. So in quarter 3, the body of the report is fairly standard, but Appendix 1 really shows the follow-up work that's been completed, and all but one of the recommendations that we followed up hadn't been completed. And then the details in Appendix 2 of that one low-risk recommendation, which relates to Pontezilla's Comprehensive School. Again, is COVID related and is primarily to do with inventories, which is fairly low risk. It's planned to be fully implemented by the 30th of April 2022. So I've got no major concerns with the non-implementation of that one low-risk recommendation, Chair. And that's fairly standard, and that's the report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Simon on that report? I've just got one comment to make, and that's with regard to paragraph 5.1, which talks about the external audit recommendation tracking. The statement there that talks about a suitable IT solution. So that needs to be, bottomed out as soon as we can, really. And I know Adam Hill and Richard Rowlands are heavily involved in trying to find a solution for that. And the Audit Wales are also trying to help support how we can track those recommendations, because some of those reports go to scrutiny as well as to Governance and Audit Committee. And we just need to have a better grip on what's happening with those reports. So I just wanted to raise that for the purpose of the minutes. We can move now on to agenda item 6, which is the corporate risk of quarter 3. Richard Rowlands was going to present this report. It's for information. I'm not quite sure if Adam, you can field any questions, if members got questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to give a little insight into the report, it is a for information report, and I can't do it the same justice that Richard does, but there are a couple of bits just to draw your attention to. The first one is under page 28, 2.2 just highlights the red status of risks in the corporate risk register and shows you some of the changes that have taken place during Q3. I'd also like to draw your attention to page 30, 3.0, the control measures, which has been highlighted at previous governance and audit committees, and just to give the committee a bit of reassurance that all corporate risk control measures have now been reviewed, and that exercise has been completed by Richard and his team. All responsible officers and updaters have been given that information of how those control measures can be now changed and can be improved to make them more accurate or better in terms of controls. And it's anticipated that Q4 will see all those control measures updated by each of the updaters or the owners. And so we should be seeing that reflected in Q4 in an even better output in terms of what we can see from the risks. Other than that, Chair, if there are any questions, if I can't answer them, then I'm more than happy to take them away and do either a written response as necessary.
Okay. Any questions from members, recognising that Richard's not here to answer and that Adam can take questions away? Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One of the things that concerned me a little bit, obviously, was that I think of the 9 high-risk red risks, 4 were social services, which shows the severe pressure that they're under there, that they're working on at this point in time, which isn't helped by one of them in particular, which is the WCCIS system. I think most councillors will now be made aware of the problems that is causing from an operational point of view for social services as well, and they're really struggling in terms of that system being effective for them from this point of view. Hopefully that's going to improve in the next few months. We've been promised it is. I don't know, Adam might have a bit more extra information on that at this stage, but certainly WCCIS with the Welsh Government has really been a major problem for the for the department. I notice also we got the Fusion one as well in terms of computer systems, the Oracle Fusion system. I assume, Adam, when that goes up onto the clouds, and that I think is scheduled for about October time, that should ensure that we're fully covered then as far as we can be in terms of system loss, I think. So those couple of questions, if I may, Chairman, and say thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, absolutely, Paxton, share your concerns over WCCIS. It's been very difficult. I think, you know, my hat goes off to the staff because they are managing some of the most difficult, upsetting cases out there, and these sorts of systems are paramount for them to be able to deliver, and they have responded brilliantly in finding other ways in order to make sure that our residents are safeguarded and protected. And I think I'd just like to recognise all the staff across, you know, adult social care, child, family, legal, who have all worked tirelessly in order to make sure that although the system isn't as good, actually our staff are brilliant in terms of picking up the pieces. We are told that there is a task force that is looking at WCCIS, that there have been updates and patches and corrections. Our own cyber team are constantly, an IT team are looking at how they can support, help and link with the various partners in order to make this happen. Bearing in mind, this isn't just us, it goes for all partners across Wales that are operating this system. So it's more widespread than just Swansea. We keep being told that there are improvements happening, there are new patches coming, but each one so far has created other difficulties. So the team are still finding those workarounds and patches that they can undertake in order to safeguard. In terms of Oracle Fusion, you'll have seen the previous reports. It has been reported through Cabinet and through the risk management options and reports. There is a board in place for Oracle Fusion. You'll know I won't go over the history of why we are where we are, but we are in a much better position in terms of where we are now, in terms of moving forward. With all the delays, we are catching up, and we are hopeful, and as we can be with any sort of digital system, that we will be in place for October. But as you've heard from Mr. Smith earlier, there are difficulties across the workforce in terms of recruitment. The same staff that are trying to deliver programs are also having to write reports and deliver Oracle Fusion. So, they're being pulled in a number of different ways, but where we can as a board, we are looking for mitigation, making sure we give the resources. Council has supported Oracle with the extra resources in order to deliver this project. So everything being crossed, it looks like October we will be able to deliver Oracle Fusion across the council. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and apologies for being late, and apologies if I've got the wrong end of the stick here, but just responding to some of the issues about WCCCIS, which I have been involved in various capacities over the years. At the end of the day, one of the major stumbling blocks when I became a councillor was that there were no integrated systems between health and social care. And I think everyone would agree, even Councillor Paxton Hood Williams, that whilst we're having these issues at the moment, there's no system of this size that is ever going to work from day one in exactly the way that it was anticipated. I've worked for numerous companies, work for numerous IT companies that were installing these types of systems, and it's taken quite a bit of time to get there. But I think everyone would agree that where we're going with WCCCIS is absolutely the right way to go, in that it's an integrated system between health and adult social care, two different organisations with completely different IT systems over many years. And I just like to say that, well done to the council and the Swansea Bay University Health Board for taking this decision to move in this direction. B, for all the staff that they are using it and they are finding difficulties that has been outlined, but C, the IT staff that are helping to get people through this. And yes, it's not easy, but we will get there in the end, and it's absolutely the right way to go. To have an integrated health system is a major step forward for both our organisations, and I think we need to record that, notwithstanding some of the issues that we're having at the moment.
If I can come back on that, Madam Chairman, I am certainly not going to argue at all with Councillor Lloyd that it is the right way to go. The point I was making at this time, Clive, is that from a scrutiny performance point of view, we've had a certain degree of problems in terms of getting the data we need to be able to do that properly, and that's fully understood, I think, and we know exactly the situation in that respect. And also what we have been concerned about is because that the staff have often been, in many cases, having to resort to manual systems to make sure that the proper assessments and reports are carried out at the proper time, has put an increased workload at the time when they've been struggling with COVID as well. And all we've been trying to do, and I think all we've ever said in terms of scrutiny, is how much we've appreciated the work that the staff have had to do as a result of that at this point currently. It is unfortunate in many ways, I think, that this system was installed at the same time as COVID, and that was purely fortuitous bad luck. I understand, but I would totally agree with you. An integrated system between the health board and social services is would be beneficial. I don't know what sort of impressions you're getting currently, Chairman, from your previous colleagues in the health board. I don't know if you've had any feedback there, but certainly it's not been as easy. And basically, what I would be wanting to ensure is that we make people aware just how hard and difficult it's been for the staff within social services and how effectively they've been able to work despite that, I think that was a point I was making, Councillor Lloyd, nothing else.
Thank you, Councillor Paxton Williams. If I could just add to that, yes, I think it was the right way to go, and I think it's a win-win situation for all organisations, but more importantly for the clients that are within that system. It's certainly got massive benefits, and yes, I would agree with Councillor Clive Lloyd. All big systems of that nature comes with a lot of teething problems, but you know, hopefully at the end these patches will come through. Prior to the meeting, I have had a discussion with the Chief Auditor, Simon, to see whether it's on his radar and if there's anything that the Chief Internal Auditor and his team can do, just to have a bit of an overview as to what's happening, what the workaround fixes are around the manual systems, and if there's any opportunities where they can offer advice and make any recommendations to help them in that hybrid situation of not having the system working absolutely 100% with all whistles blowing. And Simon's agreed to have a closer look at that, recognising it's in the new risk now on the system. So unless there are any other questions on the risk report, but obviously if there are, I'm sure we can feed them back to Richard at some point in time. The one that struck me was the WCCIS, which you did raised, and the other was on the domiciliary and the availability of domiciliary care, which is another pressure on the same service. But obviously, I appreciate the efforts staff and officers and senior managers are making to mitigate the risk to the population that serves. Simon, did you want to comment?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on those two that you just mentioned. Obviously, I think they're fairly new to the Corporate Risk Register. I'm not sure if members have seen them in a previous report from Richard. But obviously, as part of my planning process for 22-23 audit plan is to look at the risk registers and the assurance map, etc. So those two have been picked up and are on my radar to be looked at as part of next year's annual audit plan, if not before. But yeah, they are on our radar to do some work on both of those areas for members to be aware.
Thank you, Simon. If I could ask that be looked at sooner rather than later within the new audit plan.
Yeah.
Recognising the concerns that the Governance and Audit Committee have raised today.
Yeah, no problem. Sure.
Adam, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, it was just to answer Simon's question. The WCCIS is a new risk that was added onto the Corporate Risk Register, and the availability of domiciliary care, I think, just kind of answers, I think, one of the questions that Julie asked earlier about how do we know that things are being escalated up from the services, and that one is one, the domiciliary care that was a service risk that has been escalated up into the corporate risk to show that flow is coming through, that they are being picked up and then being transferred up to the corporate when it gets to that high enough level. So just a good example to demonstrate how it does work in practice from a service leading up to the corporate risk register. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam, for that. If there are no further questions, perhaps you could pass on our thanks to Richard Rowlands and hope he's feeling better very soon. If we can now move on then to agenda item 7, if I can welcome Martin Nichols. It's the Internal Control Environment 21-22. This is where we get opportunities to get assurance from these service areas that they're managing their risk and governance and internal control arrangements robustly. So Martin, if I could welcome you to go through the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take you through briefly the report. I'm happy to then take any questions at the end. The report sets out a range of areas which hopefully provide the committee with the relevant assurance. Just a little bit of background. Many of you will know this anyway, but the breadth of the Directorate, which covers highways and transportation, building services, property, waste, past and cleansing, housing and public health, planning and city regeneration, and cultural services. So quite a broad range of frontline service delivery aspects, plus some of the strategic aspects of the council as well. I think I'd like to start by saying, I know it was touched on earlier by a number of you around over the last 12 months. One of the things that I'm reassured by is that the service areas have been able to maintain the high standard of services over probably the most difficult time that I will have experienced in local government. So my thanks on record to all the team there. Section 2 outlines the risk management and business continuity, and some of this would have been touched on earlier with the processes that are in place in relation to risk management and that process of verification, challenge and escalation through the Directorate performance and financial monitoring meetings and our Directorate management team meetings. And that particular focus on red risks and escalation of those risks, as has already been referred to, up to CMT and beyond if required. So there is a rigorous process in place in terms of ensuring that. And then in relation to business continuity, as I've mentioned, all the service areas regularly review the business continuity plans. Everybody was asked to review them at the start of the pandemic and also halfway through, just to make sure that we had the suitable resilience, and reviewed again as recently as in the last 6 weeks, where it appeared that just prior to Christmas there was escalating numbers of Omicron variant and concern that we just needed to make sure our business continuity plans were able to maintain our core service delivery. So that's an ongoing basis, as well as that annual review. That certainly have received a great deal more attention perhaps in the last 2 years than they might have previously, for obvious reasons. Section 4 outlines just some of the key aspects in relation to planning and decision making. So you'll be aware that each of the service areas will have an annual service plan that sets out its alignment with the council objectives, how it's going to deliver in relation to any statutory requirements, key performance aspects, and also link into the council's medium-term financial plan and annual budget. And then the interrelationship between where we are aligned with the internal and external audit process as well. So that should all be joined up as part of the annual service plan. And as well as those plans being reviewed by the heads of service and myself as a director, those plans therefore are also submitted corporately for a sort of final corporate health check as well. So there's a great deal of rigour around those service plans and the service planning process. Section 5 of the report outlines the budget and resource management. So within the authority, there are dedicated finance partners who work with the Directorate. I'm very grateful for their input. And they attend and are part of our performance and financial monitoring. So whilst the service areas and the relevant heads of service are responsible for their budget area, the ability of the corporate finance partners to assist and work with the service areas and also challenge and scrutinise the service areas to make sure that when those monthly and then quarterly and annual reports are presented to myself and then onwards to Cabinet and Council, that we've got that independent verification, and that aligns obviously with the audit programme that will oversee a number of the aspects in relation to compliance as well. So that gives us the reassurance, and if anything needs to be escalated, then it would go via myself and either to CMT corporate management team or to the Council's Section 151 officer. The overall finance of the Directorate is reviewed, as I said, on a monthly basis, and then that feeds into the quarterly monitoring reports that are then published through Cabinet, and you will have access to those and have seen those. And I'm pleased to say that I believe the process within place is very rigorous and challenging, and as a result, we have been able to maintain the budgets within those set by the authority on every one of the last number of years. As long as I have been director, we've always been able to retain our spend within the overall budget set to us by council. What we also look at as part of the performance and financial monitoring meetings are a range of other key headings. So I've touched on things like the key performance indicators, the management of risks, which we will do in conjunction with Richard Rowland's team, and I'm very grateful for Richard and his team's input into helping us as a directorate review those risks. I've referred to the capital and revenue budgets or revenue budgets, but in addition, I should say the Directorate is responsible at the moment for a capital budget delivery which exceeds £200 million in the current year. So a significant programme of work across our highway network, our public assets, our schools, and our housing stock, and our regeneration portfolio. So a pretty large programme, and that is monitored in the same way with the corporate finance partners, ensuring that the capital reporting mechanism is robust and any issues of escalation are reported accordingly. The PFM will also pick up freedom of information requests, subject access requests that are reported to the performance and financial monitoring meeting on a quarterly basis, and also sickness levels and procurement and financial controls. The latter one in terms of procurement done on a quarterly basis. So a regular range of key aspects in terms of ensuring compliance come through the main Directorate forum, which is those PFM meetings, as I mentioned. We have had very few, I'm pleased to say, but occasions where we have needed to engage directly the corporate fraud team and directly with Simon's audit team, and I am continuously grateful for their input on a number of key issues, some of them particularly challenging, one or two which no doubt the committee would have had sight of previously through those audit reports. And I think the reassurance really I wanted to give to yourselves is, whilst the adverse reports are few and far between, I can only recall attending the committee on one occasion or two occasions on the same item in relation to an adverse audit report. And I think that demonstrates that by and large, there is a high degree of compliance, and that's verified by the robust audit programme. That audit programme is done in conjunction with myself and all of the heads of service and with Simon and his team. They look into everything that we need them to look into, and if there is anything additional which we identify that I believe or the head of service believes needs closer scrutiny, then subject to being able to resource that, and they always have been able to do that when we've asked, there is opportunities to deal with those issues on an individual basis. So I think it's my thanks to Simon and the team. We do have a very robust audit arrangement. And I think that certainly helps in terms of maintaining that high level of compliance. Section 7 just outlines some of the key aspects around the wider regulatory overview, such as scrutiny sessions. So the Directorate will assist and represent with Cabinet members the various aspects, either on a service basis or on specific topics, or on a pre-decision scrutiny basis, perhaps where there are specific reports that are due to go on to Cabinet for a decision. So a range of aspects where officers and members would therefore attend scrutiny to deal with those particular areas of the Directorate. The Directorate also, apologies, a typo in 7.3, the Directorate also services the Environment, Economy and Infrastructure PDC on a monthly basis, and the programme of work is published online, and that's dealing with the development of new policy areas that then feed into Cabinet in due course on those key topic areas. Section 8 just gives you a bit of an insight into something that's probably developed over the last 12 months or so to give a little bit more consistency for myself and the Directorate around our project and programme management assurance. And I've listed a number of topics there where we have particularly identified a need to work on a cross-directorate and a cross-council basis, being able to bring some additional resources in to assist in developing and embedding that project management methodology. And just a couple of examples there. One is on the climate change and nature strategy, which has been developed through the Directorate on behalf of the authority and now will feed into the new corporate priority for the next financial year. And the other one I just wanted to pick up is around the Economic Recovery Fund, and a lot of the work that's gone on by officers to develop that and develop the process in conjunction with Adam and the colleagues in corporate services to be able to turn around those requests and those member requests to ensure that we can commit those activities to the Economic Recovery Fund to aid businesses and the economy alike. And the Play Capital Investment Programme, which has been a significant task, well exceeds £2 million in total, and is likely to grow further in terms of additional commitments that have been made to ensure that all playgrounds in the city will have been upgraded. And that all needs resourced in terms of managing it. And I think, to be fair to the team, they've done really well in picking that up and delivering it in a relatively short period of time. Internal controls in section 9 just outlines that there is an annual review of authorization levels. That will be authorization levels for things like expenses, purchase orders, procurement, etc., to make sure that the officers who are delegated the ability to create and process those activities are duly authorized, and that's then subject to review by audit as necessary. And that allows that element of resilience to make sure that we have the comfort to know that there is verification of those control measures that are in place. Section 10 outlines just some of the details in relation to data security. Something that I think is we're working harder on and looking at identifying areas as to where we can improve any potential breaches. There has been a reduction over the last 12 months, but there are still areas where I think we need to work a little bit harder. And frustratingly, some of the breaches are on very basic examples of, you know, the way in which some emails corresponded to and sent. So we are looking at that to try and make sure the lessons are learned, not just from within the Directorate, but we can pick up those lessons learned from elsewhere in the authority where such breaches have occurred to try and learn from each other. Section 11 just outlines, I guess, two of the key partnership and collaborations that the Directorate is involved in. First being around the City Deal and the City Deal programme, which is intrinsically linked to our regeneration aspirations. You'll be aware of the arena development and the developments now commencing on the Kingsway, but we are involved in a number of work strands as part of that City Deal. And whilst that's subject to a separate governance arrangement, it is something that's obviously delivered by officers from within Swansea and to a large extent. And the second one, which you will be aware of because I've attended on a couple of occasions, is around the new corporate joint committees. And again, whilst that's set up and going to be delivered on a regional basis, it is important that Swansea's governance and audit committee has sight of and are comfortable with the arrangements that are being set up. And I'll be back again, no doubt, at some point in the near future to give you further updates on the developments following the first formal meetings that took place during the latter part of January. Last point I just wanted to draw attention to in Appendix A is the snapshot of the corporate and directorate risks. You might, if you've spotted it, realise that there's been a change on the one corporate risk, which is the local economy and infrastructure. And that links to the work that was mentioned earlier around the review of the control measures. And therefore, there's been an improvement in the control measures and an improvement in the RAG rating. And that relates to a number of key aspects because we've recently approved a new regional economic development plan by Cabinet. And that, together with other measures around the delivery of some of the projects and programmes, has given me a greater level of comfort. So we've been able to move that rate into an amber status. A number of the other RAG ratings are there, and they are still amber, although some of them are improving. If I was to draw out, I guess, where the greater level of concern would be is the one remaining red risk that we have as a Directorate, which is risk 307. And that is around, again, a point that was made earlier regarding the challenges that we have in recruiting professional staff. And it's a challenge that many parts of the authority have, from legal resource to accountants to engineers and quantity surveyors and surveyors in my case. And we are looking at alternatives to try and mitigate that. We've recently had an Economic Recovery Fund project approved where we are instigating a graduate training programme that will allow us to bring people in and train our own up. And that builds on the successful apprenticeship schemes that we have set up in the Directorate over the last number of years. So there are activities planned to try and mitigate that one, but that one, given the scale of our capital programme and the delivery that I mentioned earlier, is one that it is still red because it is still the greatest challenge we face, and we are looking at other ways of mitigating that. So that's hopefully a briefish overview, Chair, of the report and some of the control measures. And I'd be more than happy to take any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Very detailed report. Any questions from members, please? No, I think the fact. Oh, Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Simon. Thank you for this comprehensive report. I think it really illustrates the breadth of your portfolio and the importance of you delivering what is in that portfolio. Can I explore bread risk 307 a little bit more to understand what mitigations you are putting in place? Because there might be an added risk that frontline services and existing staff could be impacted by not being able to recruit and retain technical staff.
Certainly, apologies, Julie. The sound wasn't great. I think you're referring to risk 307. Yeah, so a couple of things. One is around this sort of growing your own resource, really. So effectively, we've established a very successful apprenticeship and traineeship schemes across a range of the service area, building services, waste, past and cleansing, etc. We haven't traditionally, as a council, gone down that similar route for professional staff, and a couple of reasons for that. It first of all takes an awful lot longer. So if we're looking to train up a highway engineer, you know, we may be looking at between 8 and 10 years by the time somebody gains the experience they need to go in then to do their professional qualifications. Now, for many years, that hasn't caused too much of a problem because we've been able to recruit and retain those staff. Probably over the last 2 years or so, certainly COVID has impacted on this. The construction market has gone particularly volatile, and as a result, the terms and conditions and the pay levels that are being seen in the private sector significantly exceed what all local authorities are able to provide. It's not just a Swansea issue. So the things that we are looking at, one is to look to have that direct graduate entry. So we will bring people in directly from the universities and potentially link them into a medium to long-term training contract. So whilst they may not be qualified engineers with the experience, they will be part qualified and have a lot of experience, and therefore by working with them over a period of perhaps 2 to 3 years, we can get them to the level that we need, and then hopefully our attractiveness as an employer will allow us to retain those staff. Secondly, and this is a corporate-wide approach, there's a lot of work being done by Adam and colleagues in corporate services around workforce development strategy and on the retention aspect of that. So making Swansea Council an employer of choice. So effectively, why wouldn't you want to come to work in Swansea when, as well as it being a great employer, you have all the natural assets that are around it. So there's a wider corporate piece that is looking at that. We have considered looking at things like market supplements. We haven't instigated them at this stage. My view currently is there's such a gap between the private and the public sector that the sort of market supplement that we may need to look at or be able to afford would be well short of what that private sector is offering anyway. So it would, token gesture is the wrong thing. I'm sure it'd be welcome, but it would mean we'd be paying perhaps quite a significant amount of money with no guarantee that we could recruit those additional resources. And the final one is around, back to that workforce development strategy, is we've been successful in some areas of training up people effectively from being an apprentice, for example, in building services, up to engineers and senior managers. But we haven't been able to perhaps embed that as well across the rest of the Directorate. So it's just trying to work out why it's working well in some parts of the council and perhaps isn't being adopted as successfully in other parts. So a number of things. It is a challenge. We do and we will continue to bring in additional external resources where we need to top up our in-house resource. And we are able to secure those resources. Sometimes they do cost more than what we can deliver it for internally. So we are mindful of that. And we are mindful that, you know, as a council, we are trying to deliver as many services with our internal resources as we can legitimately justify. So there's a balance between the two, but inevitably we will always use some external consultants because of the specialist nature of the type of work they undertake as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Martin. Great report. I feel quite reassured by a lot of what you've got in there. And more of just a case of out of interest, I just wondered what your sort of initial feelings of how that first meeting of the CJC committee went, and whether you feel that that is going to be a way forward to work collaboratively.
Thank you. I wasn't at the meeting. It was obviously a political meeting and accompanied by the relevant section 151 and monitoring officers. So I wasn't at the meeting. My understanding is the meeting went well. It was very much the formalities, I think, the first meeting, which was set in the budget and set in the constitutional arrangement. So it was a bit dry, I think you could say, but it was the things that needed to be done. The next meeting, which is scheduled for the 15th of March, and then the further one in July, will be where we will be setting out the detailed work programme of the CJC and identifying what will be delivered over the following 12 months on the sort of 4 statutory areas. So just as a reminder, regional transport, strategic planning, development under the wellbeing powers, and the regional energy strategy. So those are the 4 streams that we'll be setting out in detail the work programme, and I'd be more than happy to come back to the Governance and Audit Committee and give you an update in due course as to how that progress is going. So tentative start, but I think it's certainly set the ground rules to be able to take the more detailed work programme forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Councillor Mike White.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, as I say, it's very encouraging that we're looking to bring in apprenticeships not only within the sort of the building trades, but also professionally as well. Because an example, in the last 18 months, we lost 2 of our senior planning officers to other local authorities, and obviously we can look at what's coming in as well in regards to development, and also the new TAN 15. It was coming in with the Welsh Government. But under the CJCs, obviously it's important, as I say, that we're looking to set up these business hubs as part of the remit of the CJCs. And I think it's important that we can get one of them perhaps located within Swansea, and that we can sort of feed this out initially into our schools of the senior schools, the comprehensive schools, as well. Would you support that?
Sorry, Councillor, when you say setting up one of the business, sorry, could you clarify exactly what?
Under the CJCs, there's plans in it to have these areas hubs where they for the training.
My understanding, not directly under the CJC. There is obviously under the City Deal Talent and Skills programme.
Perhaps I'm mixing it up then, perhaps.
That's okay. No, it's fine. There is an alignment between the City Deal Talent and Skills. Interestingly, we were discussing this morning about whether or not there should be and needs to be a closer alignment between the City Deal Talent and Skills aspect with the new CJC. And given that there's almost certainly going to be an overlap with the Shared Prosperity Fund and the opportunity to tap into the talent and skills, which is where I think you're coming from, then I think that is going to be an item on the either the March or the July CJC to see whether or not we want to widen the economic well-being to include that skills agenda. It's not currently defined within the CJC, but I could see the circumstances now changing that may well mean that would be the case over the next 3 to 4 months.
Okay, I was obviously confused with the City Deal. I did remember actually reading on it. I thought it was part of the CJC. Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Thank you. I've not seen any other any hands up. So I've just got one comment, Martin, if I may, and it's with regards to section 5.5. You talk about KPIs, Directorate sickness levels, etc. Perhaps in a future report, you could give us a flavour of what those KPIs are looking like by way of positive and assurance messages for us, because this committee is minded of previous reports we've had, where there's been, particularly in our highways, waste, parks and cleansing, where there's been high levels of sickness and high levels of agency use. and that's caused us some concern, and we've asked for reassurances to come to a future meeting, which has been deferred for today. But perhaps that would be helpful for us for a future report, so that we can have assurances from you what you are doing in those areas where you've got high sickness levels and high agency use.
More than happy to do that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, then if we can move on to workforce strategy. Adrian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the purpose of this agenda item is to present an update on the workforce strategy progress, and I think Martin's obviously touched on that in the previous item. So basically, we are in the process of finalising a workforce strategy for the council for 2022 to 2025 financial years, with the purpose basically of ensuring that we have a workforce that is fit for the future for the council, in terms of having a workforce that is motivated and supported, with a clear set of strategic objectives to develop that workforce for the future. The process that we have gone through is that we've gone through over the last 9 months approximately, through an extensive consultation process with our senior management team, CMT, our leadership team, and the senior management customer focus group. We've also gone through extensive consultation with members through our Joint Consultative Committee, our Workforce Scrutiny Group, our Equalities and Future Generations PDC Board, and Recovery and Future Generations PDC Workshop, and extensive consultation with our employees via our staff survey, via resultant focus groups, and in discussions with our trade union representatives, to the end that we've developed a strategy with 4 broad themes and a number of strands underneath. The first theme is around leadership and management, so that we have the right culture and behaviours in place, that we have the right measures with regard to the future leadership of the council, and the future shape of the organisation. The second strand is about developing a workforce that's fit for the future, and the strand is around future workforce in terms of having the right employment mix, including agency workers, having a flexibility and agile workforce, having the proper strategic resource planning tools in place and support to directorates and service areas, building on the comments that Martin has just made with regard to the workforce in each of their respective directorates and service areas. We have a strand around recognising performance, so that we manage the performance of our employees in the most optimal way, should we say, and ensure that our pay and reward mechanisms are appropriate, again recognising some of the challenges that Martin alluded to earlier. The third theme is around being an employer of choice, and that is building on a programme of work to make our recruitment and retention package as attractive as we possibly can, and also in terms of developing our workforce so that we can ensure that our employees have the right skills, training, development opportunities to support them, to support them for the future in the council. And the fourth theme is about workforce wellbeing and inclusion. That means supporting our workforce in terms of the health and well-being of our workforce, and also in terms of ensuring that our workforce is properly reflective of our communities that we serve, and ensuring that we have the right programmes and policies in place to support equalities issues in the workplace. So those are the four themes and the 9 strands. So that's a really sort of quick summary of that paper, and I welcome any questions.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's quite a wide-ranging topic here. With regards to the, shall we say, the workforce. I'm not talking about the management and so on. What sort of feedback did you actually have from them, and did they understand? How was it actually put over? I know you've had workshops, but really, I think you actually put questionnaires out and so on, and did people understand what you're actually aiming for at the end of the day? What sort of response did you have? One thing I can actually see in there as well, we are perhaps in a good position in the council because we've got a captive audience. They can't go anywhere else. It doesn't really say anything in there with regards to, shall we say, customer satisfaction at the end of the day. We can have all these things, might be a marvellous place to work, but really we've got to, people pay for this through their council tax and so on. And, there's nothing actually in there to say that, customer satisfaction.
Okay, Alan's got his hand up, but I'll just come back on the first point then, Councillor Jones, in terms of the consultation with our employees. For the first time in our staff survey, we asked a number of questions that were pertinent to the themes and strands that are reflected in the strategy, and we asked the questions of our staff, how they felt in relation to how the council performed against those particular themes and strands. It may well have come out in previous discussions, but the response rate to that survey, it has to be said, was not as good as it has been in previous years. But that helped inform then the focus groups that we had specifically with a cross section of employees from right across the workforce, from each of the directorates, to sort of test out those responses to ensure that we could sort of capture the flavour of our workforce's mood, shall we say, and responses to those surveys. So that's why I'm saying there was extensive consultation with staff to support that, and to ensure that they understood what we were looking to achieve through the workforce strategy. In relation to the second part of the question, I think there is specific mention to in the strategy around ensuring that our workforce are customer focused and have the if you like, the interests of our community and our people that we serve as part of the sort of the key vision for the workforce in the future.
Okay, I didn't pick that up, so I apologize for that.
Adam, do you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on the last point, I think Adrian covered the previous point really well. There is a whole section now that will be that is already in the draft plan that obviously will be going through to CMT for sign off, which is how will we know if we have been successful in terms of what we do, and part of that is around things being successfully delivered to our customers. Customer feedback and satisfaction is both recorded, monitored and delivered, and more engagement through the socio-economic duty, that we have that regular check-in with our customer base, with our residents, with our visitors, with our businesses, to make sure all that's there. And then we've got the internal bit, because we also have customers internal to the council, in terms of checking that other services are happy with the provision that is being provided for. If we take legal, for example, in terms of what they do in terms of satisfaction surveys. So there's a whole myriad of metrics also that are now outlined very clearly, so we can manage performance and understand our performance and where we need to improve or where we can do better, but also where our successes are. So there is now a full section in there about what does it look like to be successful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, can you inform us in regards to the development of the staff handbook? How far are we along with that? And secondly, plus when we can get back to normality, are we looking to encourage us for services and departments to go for the actual investors and people?
So on the first point about the staff handbook, the council staff net is in the process of being developed. So in effect, that will become our staff handbook. What will happen there is that, you know, in terms of the information that's contained in there that might not be readily available to our frontline workforce, then, you know, that will be part of the rollout, if you like, to ensure that those staff have ready access to that level of information. In relation to investors in people, you know, I've worked in organisations previously where we have achieved accreditation in investors in people. That hasn't been considered, to be honest with you, as part of this strategy. You know, as part of the workforce that we have a number of accreditation mechanisms in respect of different parts of the strand of the strategy. But that hasn't been particularly identified as something that we should be looking to achieve at this particular point in time. Maybe in the future, as we develop the action plan for future years, but certainly in the short term, that's not something that we are aiming to achieve at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Adrian.
Adam, did you want to add to that?
Yes, if I can, thank you. Just in terms of the two bits, really. The first one, in terms of the staff handbook, one of the things that we're just in the process of developing is a flip book, giving a real insight into the council, really easy to access. So the online staff net is the more technical bit. But we want staff, when they join the authority, to have an overview, very easy, a really welcome to the council, telling them who their senior management team is, what the services are we provide, what kind of activities that we can do for people to join and become part of, what we do in terms of training. So an easy to use, and it's called a flip book, and it's going to be interactive as well for those that have access to the internet. For those that don't, there'll be a paper copy. So there's two levels, one of which is an easy to use, really welcome, one of which, as Adrian's talked about, is the more technical policies, guidance and support behind the system. The other thing sort of Adrian's touched on is the investors in people. There's lots of customer service excellence models out there, of which investors in people is one. There used to be charter marks and all kinds of things. I don't want to get hung up on a badge, never have. I think it's important that we live to the principles of many of these schemes and show that we can deliver it. And I'd rather put the resources into developing schemes that actually improve and give opportunity than just pay people to give us a badge at the end of it, and put that resources directly into helping with training programs and development. Adrian's done a lot of good work working with the university and the colleges to give us that sort of robust support and connection to people that know about how we can develop. And Martin talked a lot about what he's doing in place, certainly around apprenticeships. We're doing the same with Dave Howes and his team in social services. You know, right the way across the board, we have all these schemes. So I wouldn't want to get hung up, that's all, on the name of what it is as an award that we'd get. But I think you're quite right, Mike, in terms of living the principles of these awards. And if at the end of it we manage to get one, then that's great. But I'd rather live the principles than waste the money on the badge. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any more hands at the moment. If that's the case, then if I can draw this one to a close, just a comment from.
Excuse me, Chair. My councillor Lewis has his hand up.
Sorry, Mike Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't get my hand to the button. Yes, Adrian, nice to see you. As a HR representative, I know it's deviating slightly from the conversation we've been having, but we hear a lot on the media about institutional racism. Can you outline this council's stance on equal opportunities for employment for all ethnic minority groups and confirm our approach to be fair to all?
Yeah, I think I can just answer that last point first of all. Yeah, I mean, I can confirm our approach and our intention to be fair to all. One of the sort of the key strands around this strategy is around equality in the workplace, and what's come out of the focus groups in particular is that there is a piece of work that we need to do to should we say progress that even further. We're setting up a workforce equalities group, which are meeting for the first time tomorrow with representatives from the different protected characteristics groups and the Directorate to move forward on some key equalities issues. For example, ensuring that we have, a robust collection of data on our workforce as much as we possibly can, ensuring that our recruitment processes are as fair and equitable as they possibly can, ensuring that our provision for our disabled workforce and meets the sort of the highest standards. So from my point of view, we have a lot of that in place, and certainly the intention to have that in place, and that will be a key strand for our strategy going forward to build on that.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There are no other questions then, just a comment from me. I welcome this paper because, this committee has been concerned with the absence of a workforce strategy since at least 2000 well, probably from the time I was appointed at chair, which is 2018-19. And every year we had assurance that the strategy was being developed and it was going to be the following year, then the following year. So I'm pleased to see it's coming to some fruition at long last. So thank you for that. My only concern is it talks in the paper about the strategy not being launched until March 2023. Which is another 12 months down the line.
Sorry, that should be 2022.
Right. Okay. I'm reassured by that because I thought,
I don't know how that crept through, but it's 2022.
Yeah, just to give you some reassurance, Chair, it is in its very final draft now. It is going to CMT on the 16th of February, hopefully for approval. There may be a few tweaks out of that, but we're hopeful by the end of February it will be signed off and then will be launched in March.
That's excellent news. It'll be nice to place in the Audit Committee, the Governance and Audit Committee's annual report, that we have now got the strategy and it was launched before the end of the year. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Okay, thank you.
If we can move on, then we've got a couple more items. It's the tracker report for the Governance and Audit Committee and the Governance and Audit Committee work plan. So perhaps we can take both of those together. If members have got any questions or any comments to make with regards to the tracker report, first of all, which is a record of what we've been asking officers and staff to bring back to the committee for assurance. There's a number ongoing, but there's dates, I believe, in all of them. So are there any questions regarding that tracker report? I'm happy that we've got a handle on what we need to see in future meetings, but obviously with the elections coming up in May, maybe some hiccups with the timelines in those that we need to recognise. If there are no questions on agenda item 10, if we can move into the Audit Committee work plan for 21-22, and what we've done in this work plan with the kind of support from Jeremy, we've now got the additional responsibilities built in. Again, there may be some tweaks to the timelines of those reports, recognising the May situation. I know progress is being made with the recruitment of additional lay members, and I believe there's a meeting tomorrow of the Appointments Committee to look at shortlisting a number of applicants. There's nothing more that I need to add to that, other than we need to keep it under review, and also we need to ensure that we're minded of the work of the Scrutiny Programme Committee, And I'm sure Councillor Chris Hawley and others will highlight anything that we are missing or duplicating or sitting in the wrong committees as we move forward. If there are any other comments on the work plan? No. Okay, well, all the reports today were for information and noting. So if I can bring the meeting to a close, if there are no other questions or comments to raise. Could I thank you all once again for your input today? There's been some excellent questions as normal. And thank you for the officers and the pressures you're all under for bringing these reports and giving us the time for today. So I bring the meeting to a close, and our next meeting is on the 8th of March. In the meanwhile, stay safe, everyone, and thank you again.
Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
That's all.
Thanks all.